What if I told you guys the next wave of AI is not about a smarter model, it's about a smarter connection. So your AI actually use your tools, your data, your workflows without duct tape and custom glue code every time. I am Mac Goswami. Welcome to Inside Assemble AI Season 3, Episode 3.
And I'm Sam Day. Welcome to our brand new podcast episode where we decode the AI revolution, one insight at a time.
Today we are tackling MCP, Model Context Protocol. It sounds very technical, but it's actually a huge shift for the builder and enterprises. Those who don't know what is MCP is, I'm sure that most of you guys already know about Model Context Protocol. Model Context Protocol is a standard protocol which can be worked as a liaison for the LLMs, for any kind of models to connect securely with the other different data sources for API, for any other database, whatever it is.
Yeah, great point. And I totally agree with you. What makes MCP exciting is that it's not another AI framework of the month, right? It's closer to an infrastructure standard. It's like an USB-C moment for AI tooling, which you can just plug and play with any other infrastructure or any other services and just become that part of your AI ecosystem. So that means that this MCP helping your AI toolkits to be a part of an ecosystem and just grow bigger and better.
Absolutely, Sam. So today we'll break down what MCP is, why interoperability matters, the most important use cases, and we'll keep it real. What it solves, what it doesn't, and how to think about in 2026. So let's get dive into it for our segment one. Why MCP is showing up everywhere. Sam, let's start with the why now. For the average listener, MCP sounds like another acronym. Why shouldn't they care?
That's a great question to start with, especially for our listeners who are really trying to get and wrap their head around what is MCP is. So let me break it down for you. Because everyone building agentic systems and they're kind of hitting the same wall. We can get the model to reason, we can get it to chat. But the moment you ask it to reliably interact with tools, whether it's databases or CRMs or ticketing systems or even code bases, you end up writing custom integration for every tool, every vendor, every workflow. And that's where MCP coming in, Sam, Mac.
And every integration becomes a snowflake.
Exactly. Different tool, calling formats, different authentication patterns, different schemas, inconsistent outputs. Then the model breaks because one endpoint returns a field named something called, let's say, identification. And another returns an identification, but that relates to something else. So it's kind of like haphazard situation because you don't know what you're trying to fetch from different sources.
Absolutely. So, what I understand that, MCP is basically a push toward standardizing the how of connecting models to context and the tools. And we can also break it down, that MCP agents and MCP server and MCP clients. So I can call it like, for MCP clients, mostly like, for when we are putting our prompts sitting on that LLM, MCP clients, and when we are fetching any records from any of the websites, you can call it any of the other API. These we can call it as the MCP server.
Yeah, you got it right, Mac. Because MCP it's kind of like a protocol, right? That helps AI models communicate with external tools and data sources through a consistent interface. So you don't keep reinventing the connectors. You're standardizing it. Because in the enterprise world, you don't want to kind of shift, lift and shift all the time. You have to build a sustainable approach. And AI system is not an exception. And MCP brings that stability in the ecosystem.
So I would call that's the heart of it, less fragile glue and more reusable integration.
Yep.
Right. What MCP is exactly, like in a simple definition, right? Chris, definition time. So if you had to explain MCP to a smart business leader in 20 seconds, who doesn't have the technology background, how you do describe it, Sam?
That's a great question. And I'm pretty sure a lot of our listeners would kind of like, eager to understand what exactly MCP is. So here's the thing, my few liners here. I would say MCP is a standard way for an AI model to access tools and context securely and consistently through servers that exposes capabilities that model can use.
Mhm.
Instead of every app building tool integration differently, MCP creates a common language between the model and the tool layer. So it's something like the analogy I can draw here is that MCP is kind of a glue to your community. So you're hosting some event for your neighborhood, and MCP helps to kind of like bring all the community, bring all the people from the neighborhood to act together, to,
Mm.
drive together. So that is something MCP is all about. It's just that glue that bringing all the AI toolkits together.
Yeah. So I really love that definition, Sam. And my version of it that, if function calling was the model can call a tool, MCP is a model can call tools in a repeatable, portable, and vendor agnostic way. So it means like if we can want to gather a lot of informations different from different sources of data. Now it can be of anything, like it can be even a file from your own desktop machine. It can be even any API for a newspaper. It can be any API for any of the data, any of the even for the other tools like GitHub, Figma. So that will be the MCP servers. Now how an LLM can call it, those can access those informations through MCP protocol.
Yep. No, that portability is the big deal here. And also I'm going to go back to the term that you used, vendor agnostic. So that
Mhm.
means MCP is literally letting your AI system to talk to various toolkits that you want to do that, right? And it's also helping those toolkits to be a part of your AI integration layers so it can become standardized. It's
Mhm.
massive, right?
Absolutely. And that's actually huge for the enterprises as well who want, you know, optionality
All
to
right.
use those MCP. So any enterprise who wants to build their LLM, also they need to think from an enterprise architectural level, like how they are going to define MCP, right? And to connect with the different data sources.
Correct.
So the old world versus the MCP world. So let's paint the pain clearly. Like the old world, like I am building an AI agent that files Jira tickets, reads Confluence, checks GitHub peers, and post in Slack. What happens in that case?
Yeah, Mac, you actually use the term pain the pain in a really great way. I mean, it sounds a little like humorous, but that's the reality. Like in
Yeah.
the old world, if you build an AI agent and it's just working siloed, right? But here is where I guess MCP is gonna drive some value. Like for example, like you build a Jira integration. So Jira, just for our listeners, it's a platform that's gonna help you to open tickets and all kind of stuff for your IT people so they can provide service to. So similar to like, you use GitHub for, just pushing your codes and maintaining your code base and all kind of stuff. We also have Slack, right? So for MCP, it's kind of enabling those Jira integration, GitHub integration, Slack integration, like each with separate authentication schemas, rate limits, error handling, and then you write orchestration code that tries to keep the model from hallucinating, right? So it's kind of like it's taking all these service platform together and helping your AI agent to talk to them one by one. So if you're trying to deploy an AI agent in your IT world that's going to talk to all these services that your IT workers use all the time, then MCP will make that magic happen.
Exactly. Now, MCP world, instead of writing four custom integrations, you can connect to MCP servers that expose these tools with consistent contracts.
Yeah, right. The model doesn't need to know the messy details. It discovers available tools through MCP, calls them, gets predictable outputs, and help their human worker IT clients to do the stuff.
Right. So, in So in another way, we can call it like for the developers,
Mhm.
shifts from writing brittle connections to designing the workflows and the guardrails, right?
Yep, that's correct. I mean, all the developer needs to do to find out sustainable workflow and architecture, where MCP probably going to be the brain or I would say the main ecosystem, and think about more of like an integrational layer or the architecture framework. And within that MCP, they can put their AI agent and all the Jira connectors, Confluence integration connectors, workflows, Slack, everything together. So it's kind of more of like a big neighborhood that you're building with all the toolkits along with the AI agents.
Absolutely. And I think we can dive more and we can bring, a lot of other insights as well for the listeners with a clean mental model as well. Think of MCP like this, like you have a model, the brain, and an MCP client, the adapter living in your app, and one or more MCP servers, tool providers. Each MCP server exposes here are the tools I offer, and here is how you call them. So here is the structured output you will get. So it means like you will have multiple MCP servers which can access different kind of data sources, data layers, right? So you will get those datas through the different MCP servers.
Yep, no, that's correct. And I'm pretty sure some of our listeners are infrastructure engineer or DevOps engineer, so they would definitely get that. So, and MCP servers can represent internal enterprise systems. It can also represent external SaaS tools,
Right.
database, file system, core repositories. So think about this way: like in a large corporation, you work with a lot of vendors, a lot of like software vendors. You have to interact with them, as a part of your like daily enterprise workflows and stuff, right? So MCP is kind of amplifying your outreach. It's not like the MCP is just gonna help you to make the connection between your proprietary internal systems, but it's also going to help you to make connection with your third party software vendors or any external organizations infrastructure that you usually interact as a part of your work.
Right. And also the point is the model gets a consistent way to discover and use those resources.
Correct.
So it could be multiple resources, and that is also going to use the token as well. So let's go for our segment 5, that use cases that actually matter. So let's hit the use cases that matter most. Three buckets: developer productivity, enterprise operations, and regulated industries. So use case 1, let's talk about for the developer productivity.
Oh, that's kind of like one of my favorite subjects to talk about when it comes to MCP. MCP is huge for development workflows, and this is for my our listeners here. Like, let's imagine your AI coding assistant that can read repository context, open issues, run text, inspect logs, create push requests, and update documents, all without custom tool wearing each time. Just think about that upgrade and that scenario.
Yeah, and I'm pretty much sure that it is going to save a lot of time for the development community, right? Because they can simply running the test, creating issues, even for testers as well. Updating the docs for business analyst. You can do like a lot of stuff with this MCP dev workforce. And the biggest win is that it reduces the chaos of every IDE plugin inventing its own connector format. So standard protocol equals faster ecosystem growth.
Yeah. And especially for multi module projects, like what
Mhm.
we are envisioning in terms of building in Assemble AI, that you can imagine that each module container exposing an MCP server with its APIs, test, and schema. Then the orchestrator agent composes modules by calling those MCP servers.
Mhm.
Just think about that, how much of a kind of like big upgrade from automation standpoint where the manual effort would be diminished and it just like your IT people just need to provide oversight on those MCP toolkits to making sure everything's work perfectly, but they don't have to like monitor it or even kind of like just track it in every minute or every hour.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's definitely a very powerful idea and modules, as MCP exposed capabilities. And let's dive into the use case two for enterprise operations. So, enterprise operations where things are currently painful, like think for ServiceNow, Jira, Splunk, Datadog, SAP, internal dashboards, even raising the Jira tickets,
Uh-huh. Yep.
creating so many tickets, even email writer. So, um, so many stuff, and that could be a great use case for the enterprise operations.
Oh yeah, definitely. And actually, I want you to chime in here because you can probably share the service now we use case with our listeners, Mac here.
Yeah. So what we built actually, like in our use case in the corporations, that we connected our own LLM, company LLM, to the service now. So if anyone can log a particular team, like this particular development team, how many per month basis, what are the number of tickets that we can do this particular team and everything. Sometimes we do have access issue in ServiceNow, but in our own LLM that we can simply call and just type it, the team name. And the funny thing is that even though it's not the accurate team name, but it will tell me, like, that you mean this team, and then it will automatically correct that internally, and then it will give us all the ticket numbers. Same for the Jira tickets, any kind of development ticket stories or features, since it's already connected, LLM, we can absolutely go and just, simply type it. So it's kind of a game changing for us, definitely, like, a lot of stuff. And we are right now integrating our email servers. It's already integrated, but it's not fully, like, not 100% integrated, like couple of, for now we have the chat options, but eventually we'll be going so that we can also set the meeting, and there are a lot of meeting related stuff also we would be doing to the LLM. We are not doing that because we have certain compliance issue. So I hope that the more that we will explore, the more it will get resolved, the compliance stuff.
Yep. No. And I can add to that one more use case from reporting workflow standpoint. Let's think about like the agents pulling numbers from multiple sources with the help of MCP, reconciling inconsistency, generative narratives, and attaching evidence. That would be a game changer because in an organization, you have, let's say, you have a several data analysts working on data in a data analytics department, and they do run a lot of like a reporting workflow job, day in day out because their executives, their business insights team looking for interpretation of the data, looking for metrics coming out of the data. But think about that, those analysts are building some MCPs, and that's going to take away some of those monotonous, redundant tasks. So they can, spend time on doing more strategic analytics work, not just, honing on this task where, they have to pull some numbers and stuff every day and like, depending upon the database refresh and stuff, right? So this MCP enabling us to do so. It's kind of helping us to connect all the sources together and then asking the AI agents to pull the numbers, building a dashboards or reports and sharing that in a form of PPTs or document to the senior executives. So it's like tool calls become structured and traceable, as well as taking away a lot of manual analysis efforts from the human workers.
Yeah, and I think of that way, like, you can build an AI incident commander that's actually connected, not just talking. So you can feel it, like this agency is connected, and it's so and it works so smoothly that with all this information, as you explained, Sam, I mean, in terms of ticketing, the list of tickets, the informations, these are very smooth, and I really, like, got a very hard time to find all those information through ServiceNow. There are so many layers
Mm.
actually,
Yeah,
even though it's
true.
still one of the best tool in the market. But when I'm trying to gather those informations, and especially ServiceNow gave me so much information that which I don't even need. So eventually, like, I sometimes I get lost, like the exact informations I need from my delivery team or from my upper management. But I would definitely, say, like, a enterprise operations. That's kind of a game changing for us.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with you because at the end of the day, all this service now integration stuff, in the corporate world, we spend kind of probably hours and hours every day, kind of like dealing with all these tools and
Yeah.
stuff. And some of them probably redundant work, like opening a ticket or pulling some information from ServiceNow. And there's so many fields that we may have to fill up as a part of the required field.
Mhm.
But think about an AI agent doing that job. But in order to make that AI agent do that job, it needs to connect to those ServiceNow and those toolkits. And that's where MCP adding value here. So in that case, you're going to build an AI agent, make sure that connects to MCP. And then every day, you just kind of set up a schedule and that AI agent is going to do that work for you. You just have to make sure that you are verifying the output and making sure whatever the process they're running on ServiceNow, whether it's pulling reports or opening a ticket and stuff, is doing it in a conventional way and also doing everything accurately, not just getting impacted by hallucinations and stuff.
And since we're talking about this now, I think it's one of the most important use cases, and also I think the one of the most important topics in the discussion is about the regulated industries, that
Yeah.
how we're going to use, for especially for regulated industries. So especially for highly regulated industry, like especially fintech and pharmaceutical, the moment an agent touches customer data or makes recommendations, you definitely need a bunch of securities, audit trails, permissions, list privilege. I believe that we still get a lot of, we are stumbling upon for implementing those MCPs in a very highly regulated industry, and that's one of the reasons that we still was not able to onboard and even integrate, like, all the LLMs, especially to align with our data, financial data, and the sensitive information.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's where actually we need to put a lot of guardrails. Like MCP will definitely help, but the reason it helps because access is mediated by servers. So there's a
Mhm.
human behind that server, or like an engineers or stuff or infrastructure or even like security compliance people. They are controlling that and they are enforcing authentication, authorization, logging, rate limits, policy
Right.
check, and all kind of stuff on your MCP server. So we are not just letting it go and do whatever the stuff it wants to do. We're also making sure that we are controlling it. We are having a manual oversight of MCP, so it won't go like out of work or go, do something that's literally gonna like bring down the production or doing something that's gonna impact your business efficiency. We are making sure the human workers are also being in the loop and
Mhm.
controlling that authentication and security access layers.
Right. So we already, like talked about a lot about MCP, the advantage of, of the MCP, and we also talked about use cases, especially the three most important use cases: developer productivity, enterprise operations, regulated industries. Now
Mhm,
let's talk about, what MCP doesn't solve. So,
mhm,
and I mean, let's be honest here. Standards are great, but they don't solve everything, right?
mhm.
So, what first comes to your mind that, whenever you are implementing uh, AI, a lot of ways in your, in your personal stuff, also in your corporate, what the things that comes into your mind first, Sam, that what you think that MCP doesn't solve?
Yeah. So I'm going to go back to that analogy that I mentioned at the beginning of the call. Think about MCP as more of like a plugin, USB-C. It's not the it's not the framework that's defining the business rule or helping to generate something. So the main issue here, like if you come across a bad agent design, if your prompts and workflows are sloppy, MCP won't fix that because what MCP is doing, you're just letting your agent to talk to other sources. But if there's a problem in the underlying agent, then it won't be able to fix that. Like
Right.
think about hallucination. The
Right.
model can still misunderstand intent. It still needs some guardrails. Let's think about the cost. The tool still costs time and money because there's some rate limits and caching is also come into picture. There's also another thing, data quality. Like if I go back to my reporting workflow example, like sometime, if the underlying data that the MCP is helping us to fetch from different sources
Okay. Uh-huh.
had bad quality and consistency, MCP won't be able to solve that. MCP is just a toolkit that helping us to drive some of the stuff, and it's just more of a connectors, but it won't be able to
Absolutely.
fix any underlying issues that the LLM or the agent or even the data poses.
Right, absolutely. And I think, that a lot of time that we have the confusion that, if we have to fix this, fix any architectural problem
Mm.
or any kind of other issues, like, maybe MCP is not working fine. So we might sometimes think that, we need to fix the MCP, but it's not the actual scenario. So
Yep.
we actually, thinks that what, what, what are surrounding, on that MCP. So, I mean, it could be the data flow is not correct. Maybe the data is not cleaned enough, or it could be something wrong in the AI itself, the workflows itself, or it
Yep.
could be multiple things, but not just MCP.
I would draw another analogy for our listeners. Think about that. There is a panel discussion going on
Mhm.
where MCP is nothing but a moderator. You have three panels. There is AI agent panel, there is an LLM panel, there is like a data panel. And MCP, what it's doing, it's just moderating that, but it cannot regulate what those other panels are saying. It cannot, it can definitely drive that conversation, but it cannot just control what the panels are stating,
Uh-huh.
their viewpoints, right? So that's probably another way to kind of like describe MCP, and I hope listeners would get the better, like the oversight towards MCPs. But I wanted to share that analogy just for better understanding that why MCP cannot fix everything.
Yeah, that's actually a great example, Sam. Thank you for that. But let's also go for a practical example walkthrough as well. So let's do and I think that will be our last segment in this episode. Let's do an end-to-end scenario. Let's say AI release manager for a product team, and the agent needs to read sprint tickets from Jira. So pull the PR status from GitHub, check the CI results, draft release notes, post a summary to Slack or maybe Microsoft Teams. So whatever what the communication channels you use for your teams, and create a change record in ServiceNow. Old world, the way it used to work is that 6 custom integration, brittle mapping, and endless maintenance. Right. So even to each integrations they have might have different teams,
Hmm.
just do all this stuff. Now in the MCP world, now Jira MCP server exposes get ticket details. GitHub MCP server exposes list PRs, get PR checks. These are the functions, but you can absolutely check it by different LLM, ChatGPT, but Gemini, all these methods. CI MCP server exposes get build status, and similarly, Slack MCP server exposes post message. So those are, the methods that these are the methods that been exposed by the MCP server, and by that, it's a very less amount of maintenance and very less complex. So you do not need to worry about that. One password is not working and one integration is not working, even though something is some other integration is going on, some maintenance work is going on. To work, you don't need to worry about that.
I think that's a great example, because I mean, some of the listeners in the DevOps and IT and product development area, they could relate to that, and I mean, they can think about this kind of like a food for thought for them, that how MCP could change the dynamics of the way they work right now. So it's just a food for thought for our listeners. So I mean, something to ponder for sure as we are
Right.
kind of like getting our hands dirty with this new MCP, architecture and
Yeah.
technology. And also,
Absolutely.
one thing I wanted to add, and that workflow becomes kind of like an orchestration plus policy. Because it's like, I mean, going back to that, the regulation part, we still need to put some guardrails, in between the processes. Like
Right.
for an example, like we can ask the MCP, or we can set a kind of a layer or some sort of a check that only create change request if all the checks are green,
Uh-huh.
or we can add some sort of a rule like require human approval before posting externally, or even something like
Right.
log every tool call and alert any manager or the human worker, whoever would monitoring that. So these kind of policies and rules and guardrails we have to put in some of the steps, and it's kind of like it's different in different world. But that's why we need human expertise to make sure that they are putting those guardrails and policy checks.
Absolutely. And, I mean, that's actually a great examples as well, Sam. The agent becomes a coordinator and not a guessing machine, the way we explained, Sam. And
Well,
I think,
that's a dream.
yeah, of course. And it's also very reliable and auditable as well. So I think let's wrap up today's conversation. So, Sam, it is actually that we explained a lot about that, like different that what's exactly the MCP is like in terms of like the technology world, and in terms of business world as well. So how the old world was working without MCP, and now how the world with MCP is working, and also different use cases, that what are the different use cases for MCPs. And he also worked through that a real world example with the MCP. You also brought up some excellent points as well, and also we discussed that what is not solved, still there are risk that using the MCP, that what cannot be solved by the MCP. So any last minute thought, Sam? Do you want to add?
Uh, no, great summary. Just one thing I wanted to add here, that for our listeners now, they're probably thinking, okay, if I want to explore MCP, what's the step one?
Hmm.
So this is my advice. Start with one workflow. Pick a
Hmm.
simple agent that uses two tools. For
Right.
example, let's say you're trying to build a framework, MCP framework for a
Right.
research plus ticket creation
Hmm.
pipeline. So pull info from docs, create a Jira ticket with structured fields, something like that.
Right.
So implement it with MCP so you learn how tool discovery works, how the
Right.
model calls those tools, how outputs return, and how to add guardrails. So start small and then scale up. So that'll be just my advice to the listeners who want
Absolutely.
to get into the
Yeah.
MCP world
Yeah.
and try
Yeah.
to just come up with a proof of concept. So start and think about it. Maybe this example doesn't relate to your world, but you will definitely find a small use case to get into the MCP world.
Yeah. Yeah, and honestly, and to your point, Sam, that I sometimes feel like those that who are kind of new to all this MCP and creating the agents, they're kind of overwhelmed. Even when I remember that I when I started first with all this MCP, all these agents, agentic stuff, and creating the agentic workflow, all this stuff, I was kind of overwhelmed. So I completely agree with you that when you were starting out, so best time to go for simplistic example first, and even before that, just to read either by Google or even by any Gemini, just the workflow, like how the entire thing works, like just in a very like brief diagram or just brief overview, so just to have an just to have an right understanding that what is all about.
I mean, MCP is not new. It started like late 2024, and Anthropic actually brought that, technology into a conceptual world. But there's still a long way to go. I mean, there are still issues popping up where people are saying MCP is not the protocol that they wanted to integrate their frameworks and architecture. So I would definitely encourage people to perform their due diligence before they start any MCP related infrastructure. So that's why start small, just try to integrate MCP with a couple of tools within your company infrastructure or framework and see how it pans out and if it provides any benefit to your operational efficiency.
Right, right. Thank you so much, guys, for listening to us. And definitely don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give us review, and also share all our episodes with your networks as well. And also subscribe to our Assembly newsletter. And you can get that either my LinkedIn bio or Sam's LinkedIn bio. That over there is the link is there. And until then, just stay together and grow together. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.